What would you do if you heard your child's life support equipment suddenly blaring with alarm bells, only to find someone had deliberately sabotaged it? The chilling sound of my daughter's desperate wheezing still haunts me, and so does the image of Veronica Sinclair standing over her with an empty soda can in her manicured hand, a look of smug satisfaction on her face. Was it an accident? Or did she mean to kill my daughter? How far would you go to protect your child from someone who tried to harm them because they were ruining the aesthetic of a neighborhood pool party? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. My name is Dr. Jessica Collins, a cardiothoracic surgeon at Memorial Hospital in Houston. But most importantly, I'm the single mother of a 10-year-old girl who defies every odd. Her name is Sophia, and she's nothing short of extraordinary. Born with severe chronic lung disease, Sophia's life depends on a portable ventilator, her lifeline. Every breath she takes is a gift, a battle fought with every inhale, and yet none of that seemed to matter to Veronica Sinclair, the president of our HOA, just over a month ago. Sophia and I moved to Meadowbrook Estates seeking a fresh start after the sudden death of my husband David 3 years ago. He had been my rock, my partner in raising Sophia through the complexities of her condition. Losing him felt like an endless void, one that no career or accolades could fill. But I pushed forward, I had to, for Sophia. We found what seemed like the perfect place to start anew, an upscale, serene community with everything Sophia needed. Spacious homes, wide doorways, single-level floor plans designed for accessibility, and even a playground and pool that could accommodate her needs. It felt like fate had guided us here. But what the real estate agent failed to mention was the darkness hidden behind the glossy brochures, the tyrannical rule of Veronica Sinclair, a woman who wielded HOA regulations like a sword, more obsessed with perfect aesthetics than with the well-being of the people who lived here. She had built her small empire, and we were merely intruders in her world. I should have known the moment I met her. Standing at my doorstep just 2 days after we moved in, wearing her designer sunglasses, despite the overcast sky, she greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dr. Collins, I noticed your medical equipment through the window," she said, her tone sharp and judgmental. "It's affecting property values. You'll need to move it out of sight." I was stunned. This wasn't just about property value. This was about my daughter's survival. But to her, Sophia's ventilator was an eyesore. To her, it was a violation of her perfect world, and that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Veronica found fault with everything we did. Our handicap ramp, our parking spot, even the extra air conditioning unit we installed to keep Sophia comfortable. Every time I filed the proper paperwork, explained the laws, but it was never enough. Each demand, each citation was another cut, another reminder of just how cruel and heartless one person's need for control could be. And then came the pool party, a community event, a place for us to belong. Sophia was so excited to meet the other children, to show them her art, to finally be accepted. But Veronica had other plans. The moment she laid eyes on Sophia's ventilator, her face twisted with disdain. She told me it was disturbing the pool's aesthetic, and suggested that Sophia go home if the equipment was too much of a disruption. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about rules. This wasn't just about HOA regulations. This was personal, and it was about to get a whole lot worse. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community of people who stand up against unreasonable HOA tyrants. Veronica was a former oil industry executive in her mid-50s who seemed to have channeled all her corporate authority into micromanaging our neighborhood. She had steel gray hair cut in a blunt bob that never moved, wore designer outfits even to check her mail, and carried an iPad constantly updated with real-time surveillance of community violations. Her husband, Richard, a quiet man who rarely spoke, seemed to exist primarily to nod in agreement with her proclamations and write checks to cover her latest landscaping demands according to neighborhood gossip, which I later learned from my next-door neighbor, Maria Veronica, had been forced into early retirement from Houston Petroleum after a corporate restructuring. The HOA presidency had become her new kingdom with the residents. As her reluctant subjects, she had run unopposed for 3 consecutive terms, as no one wanted to challenge her or take on the time-consuming role themselves. Our first encounter occurred within 48 hours of moving in. I was still unpacking boxes when the doorbell rang through the peephole. I could see Veronica standing there tapping her foot impatiently, designer sunglasses perched on her head, despite the cloudy day. I opened the door to be greeted with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dr. Collins, I'm Veronica Sinclair, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I noticed you have medical equipment visible through your front windows." I blinked in confusion. "Yes, that's my daughter's ventilator equipment. She has chronic lung disease." Veronica's smile didn't waver. "I understand, but Section 84 of our community guidelines clearly states that all medical equipment must be screened from street view. It affects property values." She handed me a thick binder. "Here's your copy of the regulations. The violation fee is $150 per day, but I'll waive it for today since you're new." I stared at her in disbelief. That equipment keeps my daughter alive. It needs to be accessible and visible at all times. "I'm sure you can figure something out," she replied, already turning to leave. "Perhaps some attractive curtains. We value aesthetics in Meadowbrook." As she walked away, I noticed her pausing to make notes on her iPad, likely documenting our interaction for some HOA record. I closed the door, feeling a mixture of anger and dismay. I'd dealt with difficult people throughout my medical career, demanding patience, arrogant colleagues, stubborn administrators. But something about Veronica's casual dismissal of my daughter's medical needs struck me as unusually callous. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Veronica found endless issues with our existence. The handicap ramp we installed at our back door was an unapproved modification. The specialized parking spot I created for my medical transport van was improperly marked, even the extra air conditioning unit we needed to regulate. Sophia's temperature was deemed an eyesore, requiring screening each time I navigated the bureaucracy, filing the proper paperwork, and citing relevant ADA laws. Each time Veronica found some new regulation to enforce it was death by 1,000 paper cuts, all while I was trying to establish myself in a new hospital position and ensure Sophia's health remained stable. The most absurd citation came when Veronica objected to the sound of Sophia's ventilator, claiming it violated noise ordinances. I had to enlist an acoustical engineer from the hospital to measure the decibel levels and prove they fell well below the threshold specified in the HOA guidelines. The engineer, baffled by the request, did it as a favor after I assisted with his mother's bypass surgery. "You know she's targeting you specifically, right?" Maria told me one evening as we sat on her patio watching our kids play. Her son Diego had quickly become friends with Sophia, unfazed by her medical equipment. "Most of us have violations we could be cited for, but she's laser-focused on your family." "But why?" I asked. "We're keeping to ourselves, following rules. And I've been polite, despite her ridiculous demands." Maria sipped her iced tea thoughtfully. "You challenge her worldview. Veronica likes everything perfect and controlled. Your daughter's medical condition reminds her that life can't always be controlled, that perfection is an illusion. Plus," she added with a wry smile, "you're a successful surgeon, single mother. I think she's intimidated by you. Despite these challenges, Sophia thrived. My daughter has always been resilient in ways that humble me daily. Despite needing a ventilator to breathe, she creates beautiful artwork, maintains excellent grades, and has the kind of infectious laugh that makes everyone around her smile. Her condition means she tires easily and needs frequent breaks, but it has never diminished her enthusiasm for life." "Mom, don't worry about Mrs. Sinclair," she told me one evening as I fumed over yet another violation notice. Some people just don't understand different. Maybe she needs to learn. If only I'd realized how dangerous Veronica's learning curve would be. The incident happened at the Meadowbrook Summer Pool Party, an annual event that the HOA promoted as the social highlight of the season. Sophia had been excited about it for weeks, carefully selecting a swimsuit that would accommodate her portable ventilator and practicing how she would explain her equipment to curious children. The day was scorching hot, typical for Houston in July, with temperatures climbing into the high 90s and humidity that made the air feel like soup. We had taken extra precautions for Sophia's comfort, including a specialized cooling vest beneath her t-shirt and additional backup batteries for her ventilator in case the heat affected performance. We arrived a little after the party started, finding the pool area already filled with families. I helped Sophia set up in a shaded spot near the shallow end where she could dangle her feet in the water while keeping her ventilator safely on the dry pool deck. The machine was specially designed for mobility with waterproof casing and battery backup, but full immersion was still risky. "Remember, sweetie, if you feel tired or short of breath, tell me immediately," I reminded her as I arranged her towel on the lounge chair. Sophia rolled her eyes with the expertise only preteen can master. "Yes, Mom, and check my oxygen levels every hour and stay in the shade and don't get the main unit wet." "I know." I smiled, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "I know you know it's my job to be annoyingly repetitive." Initially, everything went well. Several neighborhood children came over to meet Sophia, curious about her equipment, but quickly more interested in her stories and drawings. She had brought her sketchbook and was showing Diego and some other kids her comic about Ventilator Girl, a superhero whose life-supporting technology gave her special powers. A few parents introduced themselves, and for the first time since moving in, I felt we might actually belong in this community. Dr. Lawrence from the hospital's pediatric department lived just 2 streets over and offered to be on Sophia's backup care team. A teacher from Sophia's new school stopped by to introduce herself, mentioning how excited they were to welcome Sophia in the fall. Then Veronica arrived, making a grand entrance in a designer CF tan and oversized sunglasses, her husband trailing behind, carrying an elaborate picnic basket and matching designer cooler. Her gaze immediately locked onto Sophia's ventilator. Her mouth tightening into a thin line, she made her way through the crowd, stopping to speak with various residents before finally approaching us. "Dr. Collins," she said with a tight smile, "I don't recall approving medical equipment for the pool area." "It's not pool equipment, Veronica. It's my daughter's ventilator. She needs it to breathe." "Yes, but we have regulations about the pool area. Health department codes. You understand the health department has no issue with portable medical devices," I replied. "I checked in advance." Sophia looked up from her conversation with the other children, her face falling as she recognized the now familiar tension. "Is there a problem, Mom?" "No problem, sweetie," I assured her, though my eyes never left Veronica's. "Mrs. Sinclair and I are just discussing the pool rules." "The equipment is disruptive," Veronica insisted. "The humming noise is bothering other guests, and it's taking up space on the pool deck that could be used for proper pool furniture." I looked around at the half-empty deck, then at the other parents who had overheard and were now watching uncomfortably. "No one else seems bothered," I pointed out, "and Sophia has as much right to be here as anyone. Perhaps your daughter would be more comfortable at home," Veronica suggested, her voice syrupy with false concern. "This heat can't be good for her condition." The way she said condition like it was something shameful or contagious made my blood pressure spike. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that losing my temper would only make things worse for Sophia. My daughter's medical needs are between me and her doctors. I replied, struggling to maintain professionalism, "And she wants to be at the pool party with the other children, Mom." "It's okay," Sophia whispered, her eyes downcast. "We can go home." My heart broke seeing her so willing to retreat to make herself smaller to accommodate someone else's prejudice. It was a survival skill she'd developed over years of navigating a world not designed for children with medical complexities, but it wasn't one I wanted her to need. "No, honey, we can't," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, because there's nothing wrong with you being here with your medical equipment. Federal law protects your right to access community facilities with necessary medical devices. Several parents moved closer, including Nathan Turner, a civil rights attorney who lived 3 doors down from us. We had met briefly during the neighborhood welcome dinner, where he had mentioned his work focused on disability and medical discrimination cases. "She's absolutely right, Veronica." He said the ADA is quite clear on this point. Denying access to community facilities based on necessary medical equipment is textbook discrimination. "I'm not denying access," Veronica snapped, clearly annoyed at being publicly challenged. "I'm simply thinking of everyone's enjoyment of the facilities. That machine disrupts the aesthetic we're trying to maintain. I think we can all survive a slightly disrupted aesthetic," Nathan replied dryly, "especially when the alternative is making a child feel unwelcome." Dr. Lawrence stepped forward as well, stepped as a pediatrician. "I can confirm there is absolutely no medical reason why Sophia and her ventilator shouldn't be here. In fact, social interaction is extremely beneficial for children with chronic conditions." Veronica retreated temporarily, but I could feel her watching us from across the pool deck. Her displeasure practically radiating in the summer heat, she whispered to several other HOA board members, gesturing in our direction, but none seemed particularly motivated to join her crusade. Sophia gradually relaxed as the confrontation faded, returning to her drawing. And even allowing Diego to help her dip her feet in the cool water, I chatted with some of the other parents, many of whom quietly expressed support and shared their own frustrations with Veronica's reign of terror. She cited us for having our Christmas lights up 2 days into January. One mother confided called it seasonal decoration violation and fined us $200. Our fence was apparently the wrong shade of brown. Another added, "We had to repaint it 3 times before she approved it." About an hour into the party, I realized we'd forgotten Sophia's special sunscreen in the car. Her medication makes her extremely sun-sensitive, and she was starting to look pink. "Despite the shade, I'm going to run to the car for your sunscreen," I told her. "Will you be okay for 2 minutes? I'm fine." "Mom," she assured me with the exasperated tone, "only preteen can perfect. I'm not a baby. I know you're not," I smiled. "I'll be right back. Your ventilator battery is fully charged, but remember, if the alarm goes off, press the blue button and use my emergency inhaler," she recited. "I know the drill, Mom." I was gone for maybe 3 minutes. The car was parked in the overflow lot just past the community center, a short walk under normal circumstances, but it felt like miles. As I hurried back, sunscreen in hand, halfway back from the car, I heard the shrill, unmistakable alarm of Sophia's ventilator, followed by gasping sounds that turned my blood to ice. I dropped everything and ran. The scene I returned to is burned into my memory forever. Sophia was hunched over, struggling for breath, her lips already taking on a bluish tinge. Her ventilator was blaring its critical failure alarm, the screen flashing with liquid detection warnings, and standing over her was Veronica, an empty can of Dr. Pepper in her hand. "What happened?" I screamed, rushing to Sophia and immediately activating the emergency backup system on her ventilator. My hands moved with the automatic precision that comes from years of medical training and maternal instinct, disconnecting the compromised main unit and switching to the emergency backup system we always carried. I accidentally spilled my drink. Veronica stammered, though her face showed more annoyance than concern. The machine just started making that awful noise. But Nathan Turner was already by my side, his phone in his hand. "That's not what happened," he said grimly. "I was filming my kids diving when I caught this in the background." He turned his phone toward me, showing Veronica deliberately tilting her soda can over Sophia's ventilator, while my daughter was distracted talking to another child. The audio captured Veronica's whispered words. "Now, let's see if you can stay at the party." The world seemed to freeze. Sophia's breathing was stabilizing thanks to the backup system, but her eyes were wide with fear. Around us, Parents were gathering, some helping to move other children away, others calling for help. Dr. Lawrence had rushed over and was helping me assess Sophia, his trained eyes checking her vital signs as I worked to stabilize her breathing. "Her oxygen saturation is dropping," he murmured. "We need to get her to the hospital for evaluation." "You tried to kill my daughter." I said the words feeling strange in my mouth. The physician in me had taken over, ensuring Sophia's airways were clear, checking her oxygen levels with the portable monitor I always carried. But beneath that medical training, a primal maternal rage was building. "Don't be dramatic," Veronica scoffed, though her voice wavered. "It was an accident, and regardless, that machine doesn't belong at a pool. This proves my point about safety." Several parents gasped at her callousness. Richard, Veronica's husband, had gone pale, backing away from his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Nathan placed his hand on my shoulder. "Jessica, focus on Sophia. I've already called 911, and I have the video secured. This wasn't an accident. Maria had gathered Sophia's belongings and was helping me prepare her for transport. The ambulance is 3 minutes out," she informed me, her nurse's training evident in her calm efficiency. "Do you need anything else?" The next few hours passed in a blur. Paramedics arrived and transported Sophia to Memorial, where my colleagues immediately took over her care. The ventilator had sustained significant damage from the soda, and if not for the sealed backup system, Sophia could have suffered respiratory failure or worse. The sugary liquid had infiltrated critical components, corroding connections and damaging the air filtration system, while doctors examined Sophia. I spoke with the police, showing them Nathan's video. What I thought would be a simple assault report quickly escalated when the officers recognized the seriousness of tampering with life-supporting medical equipment. "Ma'am, we're going to need to contact the FBI." The senior officer informed me, after consulting with his supervisor, deliberately tampering with a ventilator crosses into federal jurisdiction under several statutes, including the Americans with Disabilities Act, and potentially attempted assault with a deadly weapon. I nodded numbly, my mind still processing the reality that someone had deliberately tried to harm my child, not in a moment of passion or confusion, but with calculated malice. "Will you need to take the ventilator as evidence?" I asked medical practicality. Breaking through my shock, "We'll need to document the damage, but our techs can do that here at the hospital, so your daughter isn't without equipment." The officer assured me, "Mr. Turner has already provided us with the video evidence, which clearly shows intent." 2 days later, as Sophia recovered in the hospital with a new ventilator system, Agent Tanya Rodriguez from the FBI sat across from me in the hospital cafeteria. She was a non-nonsense woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a reassuring competence that reminded me of the best trauma surgeons. "Dr. Collins, we're treating this as a federal hate crime against a disabled individual as well as attempted assault with a deadly weapon," she explained. "Mr. Turner's video evidence is extremely compelling, and we have statements from 12 other witnesses who observed Miss Sinclair's hostility toward your daughter prior to the incident." "I still can't believe someone would do this," I said, my hands trembling around my coffee cup over pool aesthetic. "Unfortunately, we see cases of disability discrimination that escalate to violence," Agent Rodriguez replied, "but rarely is it captured so clearly on video, and rarely is the intent so obvious. Miss Sinclair has been arrested and is facing serious federal charges." She outlined the legal process ahead, interviews, potential testimony, the likelihood of a plea bargain given the overwhelming evidence throughout the conversation. I found myself torn between my professional training to remain objective and my maternal instinct to seek justice. "What about the HOA itself?" I asked. "They've enabled her behavior for years. We're looking into that as well." Agent Rodriguez confirmed, "If there's a pattern of discriminatory practices, the entire HOA could face civil penalties. Nathan Turner has offered to represent affected families pro bono in a civil suit. If you're interested, within the Meadowbrook community, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, unanimously voting to remove Veronica from her position. Residents I'd never met came forward with their own stories of Veronica's discriminatory behavior, a family with an autistic son who was told their child's stamming behaviors were disturbing. The piece an elderly man threatened with fines for his mobility scooter tracks on the sidewalk. A woman with PTSD whose service dog was deemed unsuitable for the neighborhood image. Maria organized a meal train for us, ensuring that when Sophia was discharged, we wouldn't have to worry about cooking. Diego made a hand-drawn get-well card signed by all the neighborhood children. Even residents who had previously avoided us out of awkwardness or uncertainty now reached out with offers of support. The most surprising visitor we received in the hospital was Veronica's husband, Richard. He came alone, ashen-faced, and carrying a large stuffed unicorn for Sophia. His normally impeccable appearance was disheveled, his designer polo wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. "I want to apologize," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not that it means anything, but—" I had no idea how far Veronica's issues had gone. "We're getting divorced, and I've instructed our attorney to set up a trust for Sophia's medical expenses." I accepted the unicorn, but made no promises about dropping charges. Some actions can't be undone with money or apologies. Richard nodded in understanding before leaving a broken man, finally facing the reality of who he had married. Sophia was released from the hospital after 4 days. When we returned home, we found our driveway lined with neighbors holding welcome signs and blue ribbons. Sophia's favorite color, the new interim HOA president, a retired nurse named Margaret, presented us with a formal apology from the board and a revised set of community guidelines explicitly protecting the rights of residents with medical needs. "We've been letting the wrong values define our community," Margaret announced to the gathered crowd. "Meadowbrook should be known for how we care for each other, not for our perfectly manicured lawns or matching mailboxes." The children had organized a welcome committee of their own, with Diego proudly showing Sophia the adaptations they had made to the neighborhood clubhouse, homemade signs designating power outlets for medical equipment. A newly installed ramp built by one of the fathers who worked in construction, and a special Sophia's Corner with an art station set up for her that evening. As I helped Sophia with her breathing treatments, she looked up at me with those wise eyes that always seemed older than her years. "Mom is Mrs. Sinclair going to jail, probably." I answered honestly. What she did was very serious. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "She could have killed me. Yes, sweetheart. She could have. But she didn't," Sophia said firmly. "Because we're always prepared and because good people helped us like Mr. Turner and Dr. Lawrence and the police. Her resilience never ceased to amaze me. That's right. There will always be people who don't understand or who are afraid of differences, but there will also always be helpers in the weeks that followed. The legal process against Veronica moved forward. She was indicted on federal charges of deliberately interfering with the civil rights of a disabled person, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, and tampering with a medical device. If convicted, she faced up to 30 years in prison. Her defense team attempted to portray the incident as an unfortunate accident, but Nathan's video and the statements from other residents painted a clear picture of premeditation and malice. When offered a plea deal of 10 years, Veronica finally accepted, eliminating the need for Sophia to testify at trial. The wider impact of the case spread beyond our community. Local news coverage sparked conversations about accessibility and discrimination throughout Houston. Medical equipment companies reached out to offer Sophia upgraded equipment with enhanced safety features. Several disability rights organizations invited her to become a young ambassador. The hospital where I worked implemented new training for staff about supporting families with medically complex children. I was asked to lead sessions for medical students about the intersection of disability rights and health care, bringing Sophia along when appropriate to share her perspective for her part. Sophia approached the aftermath with the same resilience she's always shown. "Mom," she said one evening as I helped her with her breathing treatments, "do you think Mrs. Sinclair hated me because she was afraid?" "Afraid?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah, sometimes people are mean because they're afraid of things that remind them everyone can get sick or hurt. My ventilator probably scared her because it showed her that bodies can break at 10 years old." My daughter had more wisdom and compassion than the woman who had tried to harm her. That's very insightful, Sophia. But fear doesn't excuse hurting others. No, she agreed. But understanding might help stop it from happening to someone else. Inspired by Sophia's perspective, I established the Breath of Life Foundation, a nonprofit that supports children who require respiratory assistance. We provide educational resources to communities, schools, and neighborhood associations about integrating medically complex children into social settings. We've already partnered with 15 HOAs across Texas to revise their guidelines to be more inclusive. Nathan Turner joined our board of directors offering legal expertise and advocacy training. Maria helped develop a medical equipment 101 course for community managers and school administrators. Even Richard Sinclair, seeking redemption, perhaps made a substantial anonymous donation to fund our first educational conference. 6 months after the incident, Meadowbrook Estates hosted another pool party, this one explicitly celebrating diversity within our community. Children with various disabilities and medical needs were the guests of honor. Sophia helped design special accommodations, including a sensory-friendly quiet zone and accessible pool entry points, as I watched my daughter explain her ventilator to a fascinated group of children, showing them her custom-decorated carrying case and explaining how it helped her breathe. I felt both heartbreak and heartbreak that someone had tried to take this bright light from the world, and hope seeing how one terrible act had ultimately created a more compassionate community. Veronica Sinclair began serving her prison sentence last month. According to her lawyer, she still doesn't fully comprehend the severity of what she did. Some people never learn, but for every Veronica, there are dozens of neighbors who rallied around us, who changed their perspectives, who now greet Sophia with smiles instead of stares. The most surprising change has been in property values. They've actually increased since Meadowbrook became known as an accessible, inclusive community. Turns out that compassion is more valuable than perfectly uniform lawn heights or regulation-colored front doors. As for Sophia, she's thriving. Her artwork now decorates the pediatric wing at Memorial Hospital. She's maintaining straight A's in school. And she started a video blog about life with a ventilator that has garnered thousands of followers. The ventilator is still part of her daily reality, but it no longer defines how others see her. Last week, she won the regional science fair with a project designing improvements for portable ventilators, specifically a liquid-resistant casing with improved alarms. Several medical device companies have already expressed interest in her design. "See, Mom," she said as we hung her blue ribbon in her bedroom. Sometimes bad things lead to good changes. Mrs. Sinclair was awful, but look at all the people who learned to be better because of what happened. There's wisdom in those words. One person's hatred created ripples of compassion and change, far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. It doesn't erase what happened, doesn't diminish the trauma Sophia experienced, but it reminds us that communities can choose how they respond to cruelty, with more division or with renewed commitment to protecting their most vulnerable members. If you believe that every child, especially those who are different, deserves to breathe freely, to live without fear, and to be embraced by their community, then this is your call to action. This story, this fight is more than just about justice. It's a movement that demands respect, a movement that calls for change, and most importantly, a movement that makes sure we never forget those who are vulnerable. So if you stand with us, with the children who deserve a future free from hate, free from barriers, then subscribe, and share this message. Together we can turn silence into action, and action into a wave of change that no one can ignore. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And remember, your voice is part of the change. See you in the next chapter of this journey where justice doesn't just prevail, it inspires.